The big spaceship floated in the dark void far from Earth, and all the alien students sat in their seats waiting for class to start because today was special, and they would learn about the most dangerous planet in all the galaxies which humans called home, but everyone else called the Deathworld. Professor Zix Theta moved his many tentacles as he floated to the front of the room, and his 3 eyes looked at different students at the same time, making some of them feel nervous because they had heard stories about Earth but never knew if they were true or just tales told to scare young aliens. In the back of the room stood a student who looked different from all the others, and her skin seemed to glow with starlight, and her ears were long and pointed like knives, and her eyes changed color from purple to silver as she watched the professor begin the lesson, and on her shoulder sat a tiny dragon, no bigger than a cat, with scales that showed pictures of stars and galaxies. Her name was too hard for most aliens to say, so she just called herself Luna, and her dragon was named Void, and both of them already knew secrets about Earth that would shock everyone in the room. But they stayed quiet and waited to see what would happen. Professor touched a button and a big screen showed a picture of Earth hanging in space like a blue and green ball, and it looked so pretty and peaceful that many students relaxed, thinking maybe the stories were not true after all. But then the professor spoke in a low voice that made everyone pay attention, and he said that Earth was not what it seemed, and that this pretty planet had killed more visitors than any other world in known space, and that was why they were not allowed to land there. Without special permission, a young student from the crystal world of Altair raised her hand, which looked like it was made of glass, and she asked why Earth looked so nice if it was really so dangerous, and the professor made a sound that was like a sigh but with tentacles. He explained that Earth was a trap that looked beautiful to make creatures come close, and then it would destroy them with 1,000 different deaths. And the students started to look worried as they heard this. Luna smiled a little bit, and Void made a small sound like wind blowing between stars, and some students turned to look at them, but quickly looked away, because something about Luna made them nervous, even though she had never been mean to anyone. The professor started showing them data about Earth, and the numbers made the students gasp, because Earth had gravity that would crush most of their bodies, and air that was actually poison to many species, and the temperature changed so much that it could freeze you solid or cook you alive. One student asked how anything could live there, and the professor said that was the mystery, because not only did life exist on Earth, but it thrived and grew strong, and the most dangerous of all Earth creatures were the ones called humans. Luna stepped forward, and everyone watched her move like water flowing uphill, and she asked the professor to tell them about the oceans of Earth, and the professor looked nervous but did what she asked. The screen showed vast, blue water that covered most of Earth, and the professor explained that humans could not breathe in this water, but they still went into it for fun, even though it was full of creatures that could eat them in one bite. The students could not believe this, and one asked if humans were stupid, but Luna laughed, and the sound was like bells made of moonlight, and she said humans were not stupid, but they were something much more interesting. She said humans looked at danger, and instead of running away, they ran toward it, and instead of hiding from things that could kill them, they tried to make friends with those things or learn how to beat them. The professor agreed and said this was why Earth was called the Deathworld, because death was everywhere, but humans had learned to dance with death instead of running from it, and this made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. A student from a water world asked what humans looked like, and the professor showed them pictures, and the students were surprised because humans looked weak with no claws or fangs or armor or poison, but just soft skin and small teeth. But Luna said looks could lie, and that humans had something more dangerous than claws or fangs, and that was their minds that could think of ways to solve any problem, and their hands that could build tools to do anything they imagined. The professor then showed them something that made everyone go quiet, and it was a human child playing with an animal that had teeth longer than the child's arm, and the child was laughing while the animal licked its face. This animal was called a dog, and it came from wolves that used to hunt humans, but humans had changed them into friends over thousands of years, and now these descendants of killers would die to protect human children. The class time was almost over, but Luna had one more thing to say, and she told them that the scariest thing about humans was not their strength or their weapons, but their hope. She said humans believed they could do impossible things, and because they believed it, they often made it come true. And that was why Earth was the death world, where even death itself had learned to fear the small, soft creatures called humans. The next day, the alien students came back to class early because they could not stop thinking about what they had learned, and some had even had dreams about Earth and the humans who lived there. So when Professor Zix Theta floated in, they were all sitting quietly waiting. Luna was there too, with Void on her shoulder, and today the little dragon seemed more active, with tiny sparks of fire that looked like stars being born coming from his nose, and his eyes were wide open, showing swirling galaxies inside them. The professor started the lesson by saying today they would learn about the most deadly place on Earth, which was called Australia, and several students made scared sounds because they had heard whispers about this place even in their home worlds far away. The screen lit up, showing a big island that looked brown and red like dried blood, and the professor said this was where Earth kept its most dangerous creatures, as if the rest of the planet was not bad enough already. He showed them a spider that was so big it could eat birds, and its fangs could punch through fingernails. And the students from the insect worlds who were not scared of normal spiders all moved back from the screen. Then came the snakes. And there were so many kinds that could kill you in different ways, like some that made your blood turn solid, and others that shut down your nerves so you could not breathe, and one student fainted just from looking at them. But Luna walked closer to the screen and touched it gently and said these creatures were not evil, but just trying to live, and that humans had learned to respect them while living beside them, which was even more amazing than fighting them. The professor showed them a bird called a cassowary that was as tall as a human, with claws that could cut through metal and a kick that could break bones, and it lived in forests where humans like to walk for fun. A brave student asked if humans had killed all these dangerous things to be safe, but the professor said no, and that humans had made laws to protect these creatures and would put other humans in prison for hurting them. This made no sense to the students because why would you protect something that could kill you? But Luna explained that humans understood they were part of nature, not separate from it, and they wanted to keep Earth wild and dangerous. Void flew off Luna's shoulder and circled the room, leaving a trail of stardust. And Luna said that humans had a saying that what does not kill you makes you stronger, and they really believed this was true. The professor then showed them the ocean around Australia, where lived the most venomous creature on Earth, which was a jellyfish that looked like a floating box, and its sting could kill in minutes, but humans still swam in these waters. They saw sharks with teeth like saws, and octopi with poison that had no cure, and fish with spines full of venom, and the students wondered if humans had a death wish, but Luna said they had something else. She said humans had courage, which meant they felt fear but did not let fear control them, and this was different from being fearless, because fearless creatures were usually just stupid, but brave creatures chose to face danger. The professor showed them human children at a place called a beach, where the sand burned your feet, and the sun could cook your skin, and the water was full of things that could kill you. But the children were laughing and playing. One student asked why human parents let their children do this, and Luna said it was because humans believed that hiding from danger made you weak, but learning to deal with danger made you strong, so they taught their children to be careful, but not scared. Then the professor showed something that made everyone silent, and it was a human swimming with a great white shark without any protection, and the human was touching the shark gently, and the shark was not attacking. Luna explained that some humans spent their lives learning about dangerous creatures, not to kill them but to understand them. And these humans could walk with lions and swim with sharks because they learned the rules of nature. The professor said the really scary part was that Australia was where humans sent their criminals as punishment long ago, and these criminals not only survived, but built cities and made Australia their home. This meant that the humans who were considered bad by other humans were tough enough to live in the deadliest place on Earth, and their descendants were still there acting like it was normal. A student asked if there was any place on Earth that was safe, and the professor said no, because even the cold places had polar bears that could smell you from miles away, and the hot places had tiny insects that carried diseases. Luna said the most dangerous thing in Australia was actually something very small, called a tick, that could make you allergic to meat for the rest of your life, and humans knew this but still walked in the grass where ticks lived. The class was learning that humans were not the top of the food chain on Earth, but had somehow convinced all the other predators to mostly leave them alone through a mix of respect and stubbornness. As the lesson ended, Luna told them a secret, which was that humans had a special ability that no other species had discovered yet, and that was the power to make friends with their enemies. She said tomorrow they would learn about human history and wars, and that would show them why even the Galactic Council was scared of humans. But for now, they should think about what kind of species would choose to live surrounded by death. Void landed back on her shoulder and made a sound like distant thunder. And Luna smiled as the students left the classroom, all of them looking worried but also curious about these strange humans who danced with death every day. On the third day of learning about Earth, the students arrived to find the classroom lights dimmed, and the professor looking more serious than they had ever seen him, with all three of his eyes focused on the door as they entered. Luna sat in her usual spot. But today she wore clothes that seemed to be made of starlight itself, and Void was bigger than before, now the size of a small dog, and his scales reflected images of ancient battles fought in space. The professor began by saying that today they would learn about human wars and violence, and that some students might want to leave because the truth about humans was darker than most species could understand. No one left, but several students held onto their desks or each other as the screen came to life, showing images of human history written in blood and fire and metal. And the professor began to speak in a low voice. He told them that humans had been killing each other since before they learned to write, and that they had turned violence into both an art and a science, creating new ways to destroy their enemies with every generation. The screen showed early humans with sticks and stones, but even these simple weapons were used with deadly skill, and then came metal, weapons like swords and spears that humans used to build empires. Luna stood up and walked to the front of the class, and she asked the professor to show them what humans did when they discovered gunpowder, and the professor hesitated but did as she asked. The students watched in horror as the screen showed explosions and projectile weapons that could kill from far away, and humans using these tools to wage wars that lasted years and killed millions of their own kind. But Luna pointed out something strange, which was that humans also created rules for war and tried to protect civilians and help wounded enemies, and this made no sense to species who either fought to extinction or did not fight at all. The professor showed them the human world wars, where entire continents burned and cities turned to ash, and weapons grew so powerful they could delete whole populations in seconds, but still humans survived. A student from a peaceful world asked why humans did not destroy themselves, and Luna said it was because humans had learned something that no other violent species had discovered, which was how to stop. She explained that after their biggest war, humans created organizations to prevent more wars, and while these did not always work, they showed that humans could choose peace even when their nature called for war. The professor then showed them nuclear weapons that could crack atoms and poison the earth for generations, and the students could not believe that any species would build such things on their own world. But Luna told them the real miracle was that humans had used these weapons only twice in war, and then spent decades making sure they would never be used again, even though many countries had them. The screen showed humans doing something even stranger, which was going to help their former enemies rebuild and sending food and medicine to people who had been trying to kill them just years before. A student asked if humans were insane, and Luna laughed, her bell-like laugh, and said maybe a little. But they were also capable of something called forgiveness, which was almost unknown in the galaxy. The professor showed them modern human conflicts where soldiers could kill enemies from continents away, using flying robots, but also showed the same soldiers playing with children and building schools in enemy territory. Luna explained that humans had a strange code where they could hate an enemy leader but love the enemy people, and they would fight fiercely, but then share their food with surrendered foes. The really scary part came when the professor showed them human special forces, which were warriors, trained to levels that seemed impossible, and they could survive anywhere and fight with anything or nothing. These humans could hold their breath for many minutes and run for days without stopping and ignore pain that would kill other species. And they did this not because they were built different, but because they chose to become weapons. But then the screen showed the same deadly warriors coming home to play with their children and work normal jobs, and the students could not understand how someone could switch between killer and father so easily. Luna said this was the human paradox, and that they could hold love and hate in the same heart, and be gentle with their families while being death itself to their enemies, and this made them unpredictable. The professor showed them something that scared the students more than all the weapons, and that was humans who had lost arms or legs in war, getting mechanical replacements and going back to fight again. This meant that humans saw their own bodies as just tools that could be fixed or replaced, and they would not let even missing pieces stop them from doing what they wanted to do. A student asked what could possibly stop humans if they would not even let death slow them down. And Luna smiled sadly and said the only thing that could stop humans was other humans. She told them about human civil wars where brothers fought brothers and families split apart, and these wars were often the worst, because humans knew exactly how to hurt their own kind the most. The professor ended by showing them something beautiful and terrible, which was humans turning their weapons into art and their military technology into tools for exploring space and helping people. Luna said this was why the galaxy feared humans, because they could create weapons that could end worlds, but choose to use that same knowledge to save lives and build wonders. As the class ended, Luna warned them that tomorrow they would learn about the time aliens tried to cage Earth and what happened to those who thought humans could be controlled. Void spread his wings and tiny stars fell from them, as Luna said that humans had one rule in war that everyone should remember, which was that they never started fights, but they always finished them. The fourth day of class felt different because word had spread through the ship about what the students were learning, and now other aliens came to stand outside the classroom wanting to hear about the Deathworld. Professor Zix Theta looked nervous as he started the lesson, and his tentacles kept tying themselves in knots because today he had to talk about something the Galactic Council wanted everyone to forget. Luna arrived late, which never happened, and when she entered the room, everyone gasped because she was not trying to hide her true nature anymore, and her skin showed moving galaxies and her eyes were pure starlight. Void was now the size of a large dog, and his presence made the air itself feel heavy with power, and some students wondered if Luna had been pretending to be weak this whole time. The professor cleared his throat, which was impressive, since he did not have a throat, and began to tell them about the Zephron blockade, which happened 70 Earth years ago. He explained that the Zephron Empire was once the strongest military force in 3 galaxies, and they decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to leave their planet. The Zephron sent 500 of their best warships to surround Earth, and their admiral sent a message telling humans they must surrender and accept being locked on their world forever. Luna walked to the front and touched the screen, bringing up classified images that made the professor almost faint because these files were supposed to be destroyed. She showed them the human response to the blockade, which was just 3 words that changed galactic history forever, and those words were "come and take it." The students watched as the Zephron admiral laughed at this message, because his fleet could destroy planets and humans barely had working space travel. So how could they possibly fight back? But then the humans did something no one expected, which was, they took their old space stations and satellites and turned them into bombs and launched them at the Zephron fleet. The Zephron's weapons were designed to fight other warships, not waves of improvised explosives, and while they destroyed many, the humans just kept sending more. Then came the really crazy part where humans put on basic spacesuits and launched themselves at Zephron ships with explosives strapped to their bodies, and the aliens had never seen anything like it. Luna explained that humans called these people heroes who gave their lives to protect Earth, and their names were remembered forever, while the Zephron names were forgotten. The professor showed how humans had broadcast something called heavy metal music at frequencies that hurt Zephron brains and made it hard for them to think or coordinate their attacks. But the worst thing for the Zephrons was when human hackers got into their ship computers using codes that should have been impossible to crack and made the ships attack each other. Within 3 days, half the Zephron fleet was destroyed and the other half was retreating. But the humans were not done because they had learned where the Zephron homeworld was. The students expected to hear that humans had attacked the Zephron planet for revenge, but Luna smiled and told them what really happened, which was even scarier. Human ships arrived at Zephron Prime, but instead of weapons, they carried food and medicine and engineers, and the humans said they came to help rebuild what the war had broken. The Zephrons did not understand, because in their culture you destroyed beaten enemies, but humans sat down with Zephron leaders and talked about peace and trade, and working together. A student asked why humans would help their enemies, and Luna said it was because humans had learned that today's enemy could be tomorrow's friend, and they preferred friends to corpses. The professor showed them documents proving that within 10 years, Zephron became one of Earth's strongest allies, and Zephron children went to human schools to learn. This terrified the Galactic Council more than if humans had destroyed Zephron, because it showed humans could turn enemies into allies, which was a power no weapon could match. Luna told them that humans had a saying about keeping friends close and enemies closer, but humans had improved it to turn enemies into friends and then keep them closest. The really disturbing part was that humans shared their technology with Zephron, including medical knowledge that saved millions of Zephron lives from a plague that had killed them for centuries. Void flew around the room, and everywhere his shadow touched the walls showed images of human history and their pattern of defeating enemies, then helping them rebuild. A student asked what would happen if someone attacked Earth now, and the professor just pointed to a list of species who owed humans their survival, or freedom, or both. Luna said the scariest human weapon was not bombs or ships, but their ability to make other species love them even after fighting them, and this created loyalty stronger than fear. The professor showed them current galactic maps where human influence had spread not through conquest, but through trade and friendship, and mutual defense agreements. He admitted that the Galactic Council was more afraid of human kindness than human violence, because violence they understood, but mercy from a Deathworld species made no sense. Luna revealed that 12 species now had human advisors in their governments, and 15 more had human teachers in their schools, and 20 had human doctors in their hospitals. She said humans were conquering the galaxy with compassion instead of weapons, and no one knew how to stop them. Because how do you fight an enemy who refuses to be your enemy? As class ended, Luna told them tomorrow would be their final lesson, where they would meet a real human and learn the ultimate secret of why Earth was called the Deathworld. The students left confused and scared, because everything they thought they knew about power and survival had been turned upside down by these impossible humans. Void landed on Luna's shoulder and whispered something in a language older than stars, and Luna nodded because tomorrow everything would change. The fifth and final day of class arrived, and every seat was filled with some students even sitting on the floor, because word had spread that today a real human would come aboard their ship. Professor Zix Theta was shaking so hard his tentacles looked like they were dancing, and he kept checking the door every few seconds while trying to prepare his students for what was coming. Luna stood at the front of the room, and she had dropped all pretense of being a normal student as her true form shone with the light of distant galaxies, and Void was now horse-sized, filling the room with cosmic energy. Suddenly alarms screamed through the ship, and red lights flashed everywhere as the proximity sensors detected a human vessel that had appeared from nowhere right beside them. The professor almost fainted as he looked at the screens showing. This was impossible because their sensors should have seen any ship coming from light years away, but the humans had just appeared on the main screen. A human face appeared, and she had short brown hair and one eye that was clearly mechanical with glowing parts, and she smiled, which showed teeth that evolution had designed for eating both plants and meat. She introduced herself as Captain Lisa Morrison from Earth Defense Force Diplomatic Corps, and asked permission to come aboard, like visiting them was the most normal thing in the galaxy. Before the professor could speak, Luna stepped forward and gave permission, telling the human to come to Docking Bay 3, and the professor screamed that Luna had no authority to do this. But Luna began to change and grow, and her true form was revealed as she announced she was Ambassador Luna of the Stellar Throne, sent to evaluate if humanity was ready for the next phase. The students did not know what to do as they realized their classmate had been something far more powerful than any of them had imagined, and had been watching them all along. Within minutes, Captain Morrison walked into their classroom like she owned it, and she looked around at all the different alien species with the same smile never changing. She was not wearing armor or carrying weapons, and seemed completely relaxed, surrounded by aliens who were terrified of her species, and this confidence was scarier than any threat. Void made a sound like solar wind, and Captain Morrison laughed and said hello to him, calling him an old troublemaker, and scratching his cosmic scales like he was a pet dog. The captain looked at the students and asked what they had learned about Earth, and when no one answered, she nodded like she expected this and sat on the professor's desk. She told them she understood they were scared, and that was smart because humans were dangerous. But she wanted them to understand why Earth was really called the Deathworld, Captain. Morrison explained it was not because humans were killers, though they were very good at that when needed, but because Earth was where death came to lose. She told them about human hospitals where doctors fought death every day, and sometimes one bringing people back who should have died, and keeping others alive with machines and medicine. She talked about human scientists who studied aging, trying to make life last longer, and others who froze dead people, hoping future humans could bring them back to life. The captain showed them pictures on her mechanical eye of humans doing insane things like jumping from space to Earth for fun and diving to ocean bottoms where pressure should crush them. But she said the real reason Earth was the death world was because humans had looked at a planet trying to kill them and decided to call it home instead of finding somewhere safer. She explained that every human child learned to swim in oceans full of sharks and climb trees that could break and play in dirt full of germs that could kill, because danger made humans strong. A brave student asked why humans did not just make Earth safe, and Captain Morrison laughed so hard the room shook and said, because that would be boring. She told them humans needed challenge and danger, and the possibility of death to feel truly alive. And that was why they kept making new ways to risk their lives. Luna added that humans were the only species that had turned their predators into pets and their poisons into medicine, and their enemies into friends and their death world into paradise. The captain stood up and asked if any student wanted to visit Earth and see for themselves, and every single student shook their heads no, which made her laugh again. She said that was wise because Earth would probably kill them, but she also said humans would try their best to keep them safe because humans loved showing off their dangerous home. Then Captain Morrison did something that scared everyone more than any threat could have, as she pulled out pictures of her family, including her children playing with a large furry animal. She explained the animal was descended from wolves that used to hunt humans, but now her kids rode it like a horse and slept curled up with it for warmth. This was the moment the students truly understood that humans were completely insane, but insane in a way that had conquered death itself through pure, stubborn refusal to give up. Luna announced that humanity had passed all tests, and Earth would be welcomed into the greater galactic community as full members with all the rights and responsibilities. Captain Morrison smiled and said humans looked forward to making new friends and learning about other worlds, though she admitted they would probably try to find the most dangerous parts to visit. As she left, she turned back and told the students that humans had a saying that home is where the heart is, and human hearts were strong enough to make even a death world into home. The students watched her ship disappear as suddenly as it had appeared, and they knew the galaxy would never be the same now that the death world species was free to explore. Luna resumed her smaller form and told them their lessons were complete, and they now understood why Earth was the death world where life was strongest, because it had to be, and somewhere in the vast cosmos humans were already planning their next impossible adventure, because for them, death was not an ending but just another challenge to overcome.